Through our K-Tool kit, I noticed that you guys have several different pieces that are not common.
Absolutely. We try to keep everything in this little leather pouch here. I mean, typically you're not going to wear this with you, but it's inside of our bag, and it keeps everything we need, key tool wise, shove knife wise, anything you will need to negotiate the locks once we get them pulled in one kit.
Makes perfect sense.
So going through these, we just have a couple different key tools here. You can buy these or you can make them. We've got a couple of these. One is a commercially bought one that comes with a kit, and then there's some that we have made here or modified. I'll just take square flat stock steel, bend it, and then I'll grind it down and get it to where the points and the edges that I want on them.
Sure.
Just a little bit different styles, different thicknesses. These are a little bit thicker. I like them to be a little bit thinner, a little bit easier to operate inside of those lock cylinders. Another tool that we do that that I make out of basically this is just 1/8 inch square stock, and some of the locks that we have pulled has a very small square cylinder that you have to get in and manipulate, and you're rifling through your pockets for a screwdriver, you're trying to use the blunt end of your key tool when it's not fitting, it's just too big. So we ran into a lot of those and had some problems, so I made a whole bunch of these. I just went to the local home center, got some 1/8 inch square stock steel, and heated it up, bend it, and I just grind the edges down so it kind of gets in there and gets a nice seat.
Absolutely.
And you can manipulate that cylinder real easy.
Makes a lot of sense. What I wouldn't have given for one of these on a few runs.
It's one of those live and learn things. You find something you need and you just make it happen.
Absolutely.
And then shove knives. These we use a lot on commercial assignments, especially when you've only got one set of Knox keys or one set of keys for the building. One company has them, you're the company that doesn't have them. You got to progress through a building, and typically interior doors are pretty easy to get into, and all you really need is a shove knife. This is a commercially made shove knife. It's made out of a small piece of thin steel. And you can see it's got very small shoulders on its band here on the where you're going to go and grab those the throws on those locks. I make one out of a putty knife myself. You can see a little bit of the difference. This will work on most residential doors that have smaller throws, but you get into a commercial situation and more your commercial type buildings, they have much larger throws on their doors. So I make one, basically this is just a 1-inch putty knife that I have kind of copied the same outline as the shove knife, just transferred it over in a little bit bigger fashion on this putty knife, and it works a lot better. It's a lot stiffer, a lot stronger steel, and can use those heavier throws. This one will negotiate a lot better than one like this.
And the thing I like about this is that it's got this, it's got a really nice handle. It's big, comfortable, so you can actually get some power behind it. Makes a lot of sense. Again, awesome tool, Gar. Necessity drives invention.
Yeah, pretty much. But to use one of these, and this is primarily on your most of your locks, you're going to use this edge here, especially when you're dealing with your outward swinging doors like you would on a commercial. And the issue I got in with these smaller, flimsier tools is this shoulder just wasn't big enough, and when you would hook it, you have to use a downward motion to get the cylinder to collapse in.
Sure.
And this would just break off.
Yeah.
And it was because they're a little bit more stout. So a little bit heavier. This is stainless steel. It's a little bit stronger. Get in there, and that handle, it's a little bit longer, gives you more force where you can get that thing. It's going to fulcrum right down here on the bottom. This is going to grab the door stop, and it's going to pull in, and then you just do a slight pull this way. It grabs that latch. The knife carries it through. And the door swings open fairly easy.
Great idea.
Moving along, a couple other things that we carry in our kit or our commercial bag here is we carry a set of vice grips that has a chain, basically just for door control. Whether you like this or not, we just keep it in the bag. It's just a technique you can use. Vice grips, grab a piece of the door, whether it be the handle or whatever you can grab. It's going to give you a nice chain to where you can control that door. And like I said, what we will use this for a lot of times is when we're cutting padlocks to make it a safer operation. You can take the jaws of your vice grip, cut the padlock, and then you can hold that thing tight, safe distance. Cut it with the saw, pulls it out of the way, just so it doesn't bind your saw and flop all over the place. Another things that we have, I wouldn't say designed. We didn't really design much of this. We have just saw it different places, saw it in magazines, saw it in different trainings that we have been to, FDIC, down in Baltimore. And that's the nice thing about getting out and training all over is you learn just a lot of these different techniques.
I agree, and I think one of the things that the fire service in general, I know our department doesn't do very well is pass these techniques along. You know, and not necessarily the most common techniques, but if you find something that is really cool and works for you, whether it's to get in or to get out, or maybe to lock a place up after you leave, you know, sharing that with the next guy, whether it's a new guy or a senior guy, you know, passes those things along, and it's one more tool in the toolbox, one more you know, idea to exhaust, you know, in accomplishing our task.
You know, absolutely. And this is another one of the tools that we have made here in-house. This is a tool we use to negotiate panic hardware. Especially most of your schools or public assembly buildings will have panic hardware. And whether the two doors that come together, sometimes they have a center post in the middle, sometimes they don't. But this is a great tool to negotiate that panic hardware. Basically, we just took a piece of round stock and we heated it up and hammered it flat and put this curvature in it. And what we will do is we will take this and slide it in between those two doors. You just rotate it about a quarter turn, that'll hook that panic hardware or that push bar, pull it towards you,
And you're in.
and it activates the lock and you're in. So it's another one of those tools that, you know, we saw it somewhere, we made our own, works out really well for us.
Great idea. And I see that you have the old standby framing square if you ever want to utilize that in lieu of, again, same technique, same concept as their panic hardware puller, that just commercial framing square. You can bend it and allow you to squeeze through the jam and the stop and do the exact same thing.
Yeah, and another thing we use the framing square for, as you see when we do our rotary saw series, is we'll do that framing square cut for a door that has panic hardware. We're just going to take the rotary saw, make a single cut right above the panic hardware, then you slip the framing square through that cut, goes down, activate your panic bar, opens the door. Again, minimal damage, you're not beating the heck out of the door, you're making one quick cut, and then you can open the door up normally, and the greatest thing about that is you still have the control of that door.
Sure. Cover it with a piece of duct tape when you leave, and basically nobody, unless they knew the duct tape didn't exist, would even know that you were in there. You know, these techniques, they're not necessarily something that we advocate employing on every time you encounter a panic hardware situation, but they are definitely non-destructive or limited destructive techniques that give us options. They're tools in the toolbox when you go to exhaust your ideas when it comes to non-destructive forcible entry.
Absolutely. And you know, the last thing we carry in the bag is our set of elevator keys. Like I said, this is our commercial bag. So we have a set of elevator keys in it. If we get in there, we have an emergency, maybe the elevators didn't operate the way they should with the alarm situation. They didn't go down to one, they didn't open the doors. You've got someone trapped in the elevator. It's always handy to have your elevator keys in your commercial bag with you. You don't have to call back out to the truck to get them. You've already got them, and it has an array of keys for virtually every elevator that's been made, probably in the last 50, 60 years.
And we'll cover keys and key choice when we get into our elevator series later on down the road. But you know, I think the important thing to note is you definitely want to have these at your disposal and understand that there's a boatload. Elevator entry and rescue is a skill unto itself.
So that's basically our commercial bag, what we have set up. I'm sure you guys have something very similar. We like to keep everything in one location. One guy's responsible for it. So we know when we get inside, if we need to force entry, we're going to have pretty much everything we need right here in this self-contained kit, and you don't have to keep calling for it and making those needless trips back and forth to the truck.
It's a great idea, and I like the fact that it's together in one kit. Our situation is a little bit different. Our manpower situation is a little bit different, so we have ours a little bit more pieced out to give us flexibility in terms of where we want to deploy those given tools for the given situation. So, like I was talking about the HFT, that's one of the things that gets moved around a little bit. We happen to have a rabbit tool and an HFT, so it gives us flexibility to deploy with our manpower, and particularly with having a tiller, the way we run, having the outside guy or the OVM, who has that flexibility to grab those tools and work at the rear in a minimal manpower situation and still accomplish the forcible entry, the laddering, the the major tasks that we think about we want to try to get accomplished at the rear of the building.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things to take away from this segment here is match your tools up with the building you're going to. There's residential forcible entry tools like we covered before, your basic irons, your fan hanger, your A tool, and then you have your commercial forcible entry tools, which is going to be more your HFT, things of that nature.
K-tool.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So match your tools up, your tool cache up with the building you're responding to.
Proper tool for the proper job. Couldn't agree more, Gar.